Hello, and thank you for joining me to talk about Advance Care Directives and how to just get them done. A lot of us have been doing a lot of talking about how important they are, but sometimes it's hard just to get the pen to the paper and get it all sorted. So I'm hoping that this will be of assistance to you. I'm Dr. Claire Hepper and I'm a GP and I work in regional Victoria. All the opinions expressed in this are my own, and I've purely done this to help people get a bit of an idea of how to get those Advance Care Directives completed, especially in the current climate. So the context in which we'll be talking about Advance Care Directives today is under Victorian law. This is based on the Medical Treatment Planning and Decisions Act of 2016, which came into place in 2018. The Advance Care Directives that we're doing today are designed for people who have decision-making capacity. I won't read all the below out, but on this slide you can see that that doesn't mean that someone has to retain information for hours, days or years. It means that someone can understand the information that is relevant to making this decision and the effect that decision will have, and to retain it to the extent necessary to make the decision. So even if you have to give the information to the person 2, 3, 4, 20 times, if they're making the same decision along the way, then that short-term memory issue doesn't necessarily have to be a barrier to decision-making capacity. If you're unsure, it's definitely good to sit down and have a chat to your doctor about it. The booklet that these forms are taken from is called Take Control, and you can access that at the Office of the Public Advocate. And the website links are below are just for the forms. So the booklet itself looks a little hefty, but it's actually a really good background to Advance Care Directives and the law behind it. And the forms are in the back. The forms themselves are very short and sharp, very easy to complete, and you don't need a lawyer to do them. And we'll go through them shortly. Just a couple of general things to keep in mind. When I'm talking about family, I mean either family of blood or family of choice. Basically those people that you choose to surround yourself with and all the ones that you're related to. Likewise, when I use the word doctor, I'm meaning any of the medical professionals who you might be involved with. So that is probably going to be your GP, but it could also be your specialist. So instead of saying surgeon, specialist, GP, whoever, I'll just say doctor. Keep it simple. Continuing to hopefully keep it simple, I'll just very briefly say that advanced care planning as a whole is a process. It's not one step, it's not one conversation, it's not one form. There's lots of things that go into it, and it's a whole, I hate the word, but journey. So what we have is, as part of that, is Advance Care Directives, which tell the medical professionals what to do if you can't speak for yourself, and also appointments of people to speak on your behalf. So that's part of it, but so are funeral plans, so are wills, so making sure your organ donation stuff is sorted. There's a lot to advanced care planning. This talk today is really just about getting the Advance Care Directives and the appointments done. So this is the really important bit. If you're not sure what would be important to you when you're dying, okay, which will happen to 100% of us at some stage, we don't wish it upon each other by saying it, but it's reality. I'd like you to pause here and to check out the tools that are on the next slide to get you thinking about what you might like to say to someone in that stage. If you've already thought about it, great, we'll just keep ploughing through. But if you haven't, I'd like you to pause and have a think about that, and I'll show you those tools on the next slide. Okay, so in summary, there's going to be 5 key steps that we're going to go through. Number 1, who do you want to speak for you if you cannot communicate? If you can't speak for yourself or you've lost capacity. Now that would be your medical treatment decision maker, and we'll talk about what that means. Number 2, what values do you need to be known for you if you can't speak for yourself? This is what we call a values directive, something that tells the person looking after you all about you in a way that they don't get to learn about you from your medical record. Number 3, are there any treatments that you definitely not want or would want if you weren't able to talk for yourself? And we'll talk about what that means. That's an instructional directive, and it's a little bit different. Then we get on to the important stuff of signing and witnessing. There's no point getting all the rest of the fabulous stuff done if we then just leave it sitting in a drawer. We need to get it sorted and get it out there, and that's step 5, is sharing the information. So 5 key steps to get it all sorted. You don't have to do all 5 steps, but if you've come this far in the presentation, you're probably ready to put pen to paper and get it sorted. So if you just heard the summary of the 5 main points of this talk on the last slide and thought, whoa, that's really not where I'm up to, I think now's time just to pause and have a think about ways to get your thoughts sorted before you do put pen to paper and get the Advance Care Directive done. So there's lots of different tools out there that you can use. There's hundreds of them, and I won't reinvent the wheel here. None of them actually write a plan or a directive for you. They just get you thinking, and they give you the language, give you the words to then sit down and fill yours out. Two of my favourite, one paper-based and one online, are listed below. Dying to talk, do a really good discussion starter. You can print it out, fill it out, sit down and talk about it with your family and friends, or just read it online. And the second one is the My Values website, which is through Barwon Health and is excellent. So it's a free Barwon Health based online tool. All you need to do is register your email, and then you can answer questions. It'll generate a report and send it to you. These are just two of the tools that are very helpful. If you find one that works better for you, fantastic. Let me know so I can add it to the next talk. But otherwise, sit down, have a think about it, maybe write some thoughts down, and then if that's all done and you're ready to go, continue on to the next slide. If you're unable to speak for yourself, who would you want to represent your views if a medical decision needed to be made? This is what we call a medical treatment decision maker. I know, really cool, rolls off the tongue really easily, MTDM. It is similar to the previous medical enduring power of attorney, or MAPOA, also very catchy. But there are some changes. The medical treatment decision maker speaks for you if you don't have capacity, and that's the only time their powers come into effect. But different to the previous MAPOA, they have to represent your values. In the past, a MAPOA could think about what they thought was in your best interests. Now, the medical treatment decision maker needs to sign to accept that they know your values and that they're willing to represent them. You can have two. If you're going to have two people who are your medical treatment decision makers, I recommend making sure that there's some very good lines of communication there. Sometimes people would have one as their partner, their domestic partner or spouse, and then like as you would with if you had mirror wills, for example, that they look after each other, but then to have their second person, someone outside of that relationship or outside the immediate family, so that they're less likely to be affected in a huge event. If you haven't identified a medical treatment decision maker and appointed them, the first person on the list below will be the one that the doctor goes to ask the questions. This person has to be in a close and continuing relationship with you, which is different to the old MAPOA, who you could just nominate anyone. This one still needs to have a close and continuing relationship. So the very first person on the list is your spouse or your domestic partner. Then it goes your primary carer, your adult child, your parent, and then your adult sibling. And at each step, if there's two or more relatives, they pick the eldest one first. As you can see, that can get a little complicated in a lot of situations, and that can take a lot of time. So if you have some pretty strong views about how you want to be cared for, if you can't speak for yourself, it also makes sense to appoint someone who is going to be available, accessible, and who knows what your wishes are. Okay, so we finally get to the first form. This is the appointment of the medical treatment decision maker, MTDM. Now, it's a 5-page form. Don't panic that you can't read it online. This is purely just to give you an idea of what the form looks like. I'll walk you through it very briefly, but hopefully you've got one sitting next to you and you can have a think about it. So there are 3 main pages. If you use an interpreter, there's another page as well, which also needs to be signed. But for a lot of people here, we probably are just starting with some very simple things. So part 1 is your personal details, and then you put in who you want as your first medical treatment decision maker, and then your second. You don't want the second, you cross it out. You write your name on the top of each page. You get to the second page there, and it'll ask you if there's any conditions or limitations on the powers. In my personal opinion, I haven't seen that being particularly helpful. It just complicates something that needs to be very straightforward, because the only time they're going to be asking this is in an emergency type situation. Then underneath, you need to sign it. We need signatures from 3 people on this page here, okay? So that's a signature from you and 2 witnesses. One of those witnesses needs to be someone who can sign an affidavit, or you can get it done when you're getting the other part signed by your doctor. I've put a little blue sticky note on there to remind you that we're talking about signing and witnessing later, so we won't get too wrapped up in that. So you can see there, it's really just 1 page. It's 1 page to say, this is who I want to speak for me if I can't speak for myself. The last page there that's listed is the statement of acceptance. This is when your medical treatment decision maker says, yes, I have read and understood what I need to do and what it means to be a medical treatment decision maker, and that the person, as long as they have decision making capacity, can change their mind, and that my power is only for when they've lost capacity and a medical decision needs to be made. This part of the form needs to be signed by that person, the medical treatment decision maker, and also one witness. Again, little blue sticky note to remind us that we're going to get to that later and talk more about what is entailed in signing. What are the good things in life that make life worth living for you? Are there things you're worried about in the future or with future health conditions? Knowing about these and recording them and communicating them are what we call values directives in Victoria, or values Advance Care Directives. Technically, they're also called a statement of your values and preferences for medical treatment. Your medical treatment decision maker will use this document to help guide them if they need to make decisions for you. Any advanced care plans that were completed prior to the 12th of March 2018 would also be considered what we call a values directive. So if you've already done one of those, you don't need to repeat it, but it might be worth reviewing it and seeing, if it still covers all the right bases for you. The three most important pages are coming up, out of the whole thing. And this is what I would call the 3 o'clock in the morning test. This is if I'm called in an emergency situation, that I can pick up this document and I can know what makes you tick. What makes life good for you? What are you worried about? What are the things that you would definitely not want to happen as an outcome of medical treatment? If I don't know them, if I'm not your usual doctor, then I'm not going to be able to find that out quickly from family members who are already struggling with the news that you're very unwell. So by doing it this way, I've got 3 pages that are going to give me that most important information straight away. This slide is a reminder of some of the situations that can arise that your medical treatment decision maker might be asked to make a decision about if there are medical treatments on offer, and the situation that you find yourself in. So that might be that you can no longer recognise people, that you might not be able to talk or be understood, that you're permanently kept alive with a breathing machine, that you aren't able to transfer or move yourself around and need other people to move you, that you can no longer feed, wash or dress yourself, or you have a loss of control of the bladder and bowels. These are all pretty confronting things, but these are real things to be thinking about, and these are real situations that your medical treatment decision maker might get asked about. So making comments in your values directive about these things is going to be very powerful, and it's really going to help them to respect you and respect your wishes if you can't speak for yourself. There's no right or wrong here. There is no perfect answer. The only perfect answer is the answer that's right for you. So have a think about them. Would life like that be difficult but acceptable, worth living and going along with, but only just, and maybe only some of them? Or none of those things would be make life worth living for you? Again, there's no right or wrong. Anyone looking at your values directive doesn't get to say whether they agree or disagree with your values, because they're your values. This is just what you hold most dear to you, and so we can respect them. The best way is for you to write them down in a very clear way. The remainder of this slide just talks about what is on those 3 very important pages that are coming up, and in my opinion, the 3 most important pages out of all the work we'll talk about today. So I'll just go through what's on the 3 pages because, of course, it's very hard to see when we zoom in. So just so you're aware, page 1 will have the personal details, any current health conditions that you have. If you don't have any current health conditions and you're just doing this to be proactive, A, good on you. B, just cross it out. You don't have to have any current health conditions to fill out an advanced care plan. As Dr. Ira Brock says so beautifully, I have an advanced care plan not because I have a life-limiting illness. I have an advanced care plan because I have a family. The 3rd part on that first page says, do you have an advanced statement under the Mental Health Act of 2014? This is something that would be written up with you if you were under treatment with a psychiatrist and perhaps even had some care in an inpatient psychiatric facility. These I honestly, personally haven't seen much of at all, so most people will not be ticking this box. But if you do have one, it's important to note it there so that they can also look at what values you recorded on that particular advanced statement. The second page page is the real meaty bit. This is the gold. It talks about what matters most in your life, what worries you most about the future, and what an unacceptable outcome of treatment would be for you. And these are going to be different for everyone. There's no right or wrong answer here. Your values are your values, and no one gets to judge those. The third page is for those extra things that, again, we can't get out of a medical record when we read it that are important to you. Other things I'd like known about me, other people you'd like involved in your care, and if you're nearing death, the following things that would be important to you. So all these things can be as simple as, a friend of mine uses the example of don't use cold water to brush my teeth. I hate that. Or it could be more complicated. It could be about the spiritual and religious needs that you have around death and dying. And it's also a good place if you've got someone in your life who you don't necessarily be wanting them involved in your medical treatment decision making, but you do want them involved in your care. You don't want anyone saying we don't have permission to speak to you because of confidentiality when you're dying. If it's someone you want to be involved, you can write their name in that section as well. And that way everyone can be kept in the loop. The last thing on that page is also very important, which is if you're willing or not willing to be considered for organ or tissue donation. Even if you're dying at home, there are certain tissues that you might be able to donate in certain situations. However, the real point of having this question here is that if something happened that was outside the scope of your normal health conditions that you'd already talked about, but something happened and you ended up in hospital, intubated, before anyone even got a chance to have a look for a values directive, then before they stopped treatment, if that's what your values directive said, perhaps they would be able to speak to your family about whether you would like to donate organs or tissues, and by doing that, save other people's lives. So some people will feel very strongly that they want that considered. Other people will feel very strongly that they do not want that considered and that they do not want to have any life-prolonging measures or any intubation or any other ICU type treatment, even if it means that their organs can be saved and used for someone else. And that's okay. That's their choice, or that's our choice. So this is, again, someone's values, and this is how they feel about organ or tissue donation and what's involved in that. This is the form for completing for Advance Care Directives for adults. These, in my personal opinion, are the most important 3 pages. So the first page is your personal details, name, date of birth, address, etc. And if you've got any health conditions. If you don't have any, cross it out. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, there's a box down the bottom to tick if you have made an advance statement under the Mental Health Act. Again, write your name again on the second page, just in case pages get separated. And that second page there has the real gold. It has what matters most to you in your life, what do you fear about the future, and what an unacceptable outcome after treatment would be for you. Third page, writing your name on top of it again and the other things you'd like known about you, who you'd like involved, and what other things you'd like known if you're nearing death. And down the bottom as the box to tick if you are willing to be considered for organ donation, as explained on the previous page. So I've got, again, a little blue sticky note, and that is to remind us that this values directive, which consists of a big 3 pages, you can see it's only 3 pages, you then sign it on page 5, okay? And it needs 3 people to sign this one. It's you, your doctor, and a witness. And that witness can't be your medical treatment decision maker. It's someone else. Okay, but we'll get up to signing a little bit later. This is just so you know what it looks like. So we all talk the big talk about Advance Care Directives. There it is, 3 main pages. And that's not that complicated, is it? If we can sit down and do it together and get it done, how much more powerful for everyone. Are there medical treatments that you know you would definitely consent to or refuse no matter what? If you do, then this is for you. This is the instructional directive. This is a 2-page part to the form, often called an instructional advance care directive. This is a legally binding statement which talks about your future medical conditions and what you would or wouldn't consent to. You do not have to complete this. A lot of people will only do the values directive, which is the 3 important pages I said before. However, if you have very strong views about certain treatments, then this is the place to put it in. You need to be aware that this is like you're speaking directly to the doctor and giving them an instruction, even though you can't speak, and they legally have to take that into account. So you are consenting to or refusing a treatment in the future that might occur in a situation that you haven't considered. Some examples of this might be if someone will always refuse blood products, perhaps on religious grounds, then that might be something that they want to put into their instructional directive so there is no confusion about whether they would or wouldn't consent to blood products. Another example comes from my own life, which is for my cousin. When she was diagnosed with motor neurone disease, she took her time to learn all about that, ask questions, and then when she came to creating an instructional directive, she was very clear about the things that she wanted to refuse in the future and what she would consent to. That meant that when she couldn't make a decision for herself, that the doctors weren't going to her daughter and asking her questions. They could go to her instructional directive and see that she'd actually considered these situations and that she'd already declined forms of ventilation, a breathing tube, a feeding tube, or transfer to hospital. So that took the pressure off her daughter because it was very clear that she would always refuse those things, and they didn't need to ask her medical treatment decision maker about that because my cousin had already given that direction through her instructional directive, even though she could no longer communicate. However, this is different for different people. So if you're not sure, I strongly recommend that you sit down and have a talk to your doctor about it. You can do an instructional directive and a values directive, or just the values, or just the instructional. It's completely up to you. So this is page 4 and 5 of the 6 pages that make up the Advance Care Directives for adults. So the first 3 pages, the golden pages that we went through before, and then this is page 4 and 5. The next page, which I didn't bother putting up there, is just if you are using an interpreter, because they need to sign as well. You can see there the little blue note. We're getting up to talking about signing and witnessing, but this is a reminder that you need 3 people to sign your Advance Care Directive. You might have chosen just to do the values, you might have chosen just to do the instructional, or you might have chosen to do both. This is where you sign for both the Advance Care Values Directive and the instructional if you choose to do both. You can see there on page 5 of the Advance Care Directive, right up the top there, again, writing your name on top of each page, it says expiry date and optional. So this is if you wanted to review your plan as is suggested that you do every few years. However, I'd think very carefully, in my personal opinion, about putting an expiry date in there, because if something happens and you lose capacity to make new decisions and rewrite your Advance Care Directive, and then it expires, well, you're left without an Advance Care Directive, which kind of defeats the purpose of getting one in place. So I tend to leave that blank, in my personal opinion. I did have one patient who said to me, oh, expiry date, they know when I'm going to die. That's interesting. So it is a little bit of a confusing bit, but I would encourage you to either think carefully about it and pay close attention to if a date is coming up, or cross it out and don't use it. And again, little blue sticky note telling us that you need to sign it, your doctor needs to sign it, and a witness who is not your medical treatment decision maker. The other page, the 6th page that goes along with this form, is if you use a registered translator, and that interpreter then signs that form as well. Signing and witnessing. As promised all the way through, this is an important bit of making sure that once you've done all the work, that it is signed properly, witnessed properly, and just a reminder, you don't need a lawyer to do this. What you do need is a minimum of 4 people to complete your medical treatment decision maker form. I know it sounds like a lot, but basically it's you, someone who's authorised to witness affidavits, which can also be a doctor, so why not combine the 2, and another adult witness. Your medical treatment decision maker also needs to sign this form, and it needs to be witnessed. So you can see it can be minimum 4, or perhaps you're doing it on 2 separate days and your medical treatment decision maker can sign their acceptance on a different day. And that might mean you have a different witness. So 4 or 5 people to get the first form done. The second form, which is your Advance Care Directive, needs only 3 people to sign it. It's you, your doctor, and another adult witness, someone who is not your medical treatment decision maker. If you use an interpreter, they also need to sign additional pages, and I haven't included that in this format today just for simplicity, but they are part of the forms. If you're not using an interpreter, just cross that page out. This is a quick reminder of what it involves to be a witness and what they're actually certifying. So they are not certifying that they agree with your values or your instructions. That's not important. What they are looking at is to make sure that you have decision-making capacity, and that you understand the nature and the consequences, and that you freely and voluntarily sign the form, so no one's there twisting your rubbery arm to make this happen, and that they're eligible to be a witness being an adult. Okay, so they do suggest that your witnesses ask questions of the person involved to make sure that they have capacity, etc. In my experience, that tends not to happen, and but that might be something that you need to consider for your own personal situation if you've been asked to be a witness for a advance care plan or appointment. Congratulations, you've done all the hard work, you've appointed your medical treatment decision maker, you've gone through and talked about your values, you may or may not have done an instructional directive, you've got it signed and witnessed, and it's all ready to go. So what do you do with it now? So there unfortunately is no central repository for appointments or advance care directives in Australia, and that's not overly likely to change because each state and territory, as I said at the start, have their different legislation. So it's up to us as individuals and also as healthcare professionals to make sure that we communicate and share these advance care directives so they can be in the place that is most useful at the most useful time. There's no point having this great document sitting at home in a cupboard somewhere if you're in emergency. So I think the best recommendations we've got at the moment are for you to keep the original with all your other important documents so that someone can find it if they go looking, but also that you, when you're going along to your doctor there to get it signed, is to ask your doctor to certify some copies for you. And that way you can give a certified copy to your medical treatment decision maker, or both of them if you have two. You can also leave one with your GP and give one to any of your specialists. My personal opinion is also that you should ask your general practitioner to send it to your local hospital. So if it's sent to the hospital, they can add it to their health record alerts so that they know that if you come in and you're not able to speak for yourself, that you do have an advance care directive on file and they can go hunting for it. I also recommend that you get a copy scanned as a PDF. If you don't know how to do this, there's lots of different ways to help you. There's also an email at the end if you need help in doing this. The trick is at the moment that your doctor can't actually upload it for you to your My Health record. They can make a note in their clinical notes that says that you have an advance care directive or a medical treatment decision maker, but they can't actually at this stage upload it for you. So sometimes we need someone with a little bit of tech savvy to do it, but most people, this can be a pretty easy process. So scan a certified copy as a PDF. Again, if you need techie help on that, I'll give you a couple of links at the end. And I also recommend you add it as a home screen on your phone, because if you're out and about, you've probably got your phone on you. You won't have your wardrobe full of important documents, but you'll probably have your phone. I also suggest if you have a My Health record and you haven't opted out, that you add it to your My Health record. The link at the bottom of this purple sticky note here goes to step-by-step directions that I've summarised on how to upload it into your My Health record. So if I was seeing someone as a GP, I would say to them, okay, you've done this advance care directive, thank you very much, and appointed your medical treatment decision makers. Now it's important that it gets to the people who need to see it. So with your permission, I would like to give it to your local health service, because that's where you go when you get a pneumonia. Is that okay? Yes. I'd like to give it to the district nurse who comes out and sees you at times at home if you're unwell. Is it okay if I give it to them? Yes. Also, if the local hospital can't manage it and you end up in the bigger hospital just outside of town, it'd be good if they had one on their records as well. Is it okay I give one to them? Yes. And that way you can distribute it to those places you're most likely going to be. But also having it in your My Health record means that if you're interstate, it can also be accessed. If you're in an emergency situation, most health services have the ability to use what we call a break glass property, so that they can look at that advance care directive in an emergency situation. They can't do it just for fun and giggles. They have to do it. If they think that you reasonably have an advance care directive, they need to go looking for it, and the first place they'll go looking for it is in your My Health record. My Health record might not be overly useful at the moment, but I think we're all going to find that it is getting more useful, in particularly for your advance care directives. So put it in there. It's much more likely that someone's going to find it there than if you've got it stuffed in the bottom of the bag that you take to hospital. So that's pretty much the end of our discussion today on appointing medical treatment decision makers and doing useful advance care directives. If you need more details or help, check out the Office of the Public Advocate or publicadvocate.vic.gov.au. You can also email the charity that I work with, shannonsbridge@gmail.com, and we have people ready to answer questions. This is all based on Victorian law, so please also check out Advance Care Planning Australia's website, listed below, advancecareplanning.org.au, because they have lots of resources for your different state and territory, and also for people who might have impaired decision-making capacity. It doesn't mean they can't be involved in making their Advance Care Directive and having their values known. I hope that you've found this useful, and if you've got other topics that you would like discussed, please again also email at shannonsbridge@gmail.com. Thank you for taking the time to have a look at this and create advanced care directives and appointments that will really help your doctors in the future if they need to make decisions and you've lost the capacity to do so. This is the one thing you can really do to help support your family in a difficult time. So please take the time to look at it and make a document that is really worth sharing.